Hello, welcome to day 2 of our week of wisdom with bespoke sourcing. So today we're speaking to Anthony John. I'm just going to add him into the call right now. As soon as he's here. Here we go. And he's coming on any second now.
Hey,
There.
Anna.
How
Can
are
you see
you?
me?
I can. How are you?
Excellent. I'm really good, thank you. You?
Yeah, really good, really good. So everybody who doesn't know Anthony, this is Anthony John, or Anthony John Wilmott, as he is on some social media platforms. Just a quick thing, all of his social media stuff will be on this video and everywhere else. You can link with him after you hear the amazing stuff that he's going to tell you today. But yeah, so I met Anthony, God, it must have been a year ago, right?
It was a year ago, yeah.
So a year ago, and Anthony has, without saying, he's probably been a mentor for me, particularly with buy, refurb, refinance and other stuff as well. But that's what I really want to pick his brains about today, because he's got some unbelievable knowledge on that. So I'll get cracking with it. So my first question to you is, tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got into property, and just have a quick share about, how you got to where you are kind of a little bit now.
So January 2018, I actually got told I was going to be made redundant from my job. I was a retail manager for Sainsbury's, and they were restructuring the company.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know what to do with myself. And my brother was an electrician at the time, well, he still is. And I was like, reached out to him and just said, look, I need a bit of support. I need to know what to do next. And he kind of put me in touch with property and said, look, this is a long-term goal, something we'd really like to try and do going forward.
Yeah.
Go to some of these free seminars, go and have a look and see what you think. And, I'll be honest, I thought, this is a bit of a pipe dream. I've got no money. Property's the last thing I'm going to be able to get involved with. But it kind of just went from there. I went to some of these courses and I was seeing the things that people were doing, and it just really resonated with me. I thought, this is my opportunity to, become financially free, to get out of that day job and be happy with everything in life, but also at the same time help people along the way. And I think that's what's kept me motivated all the way through it, really.
You massively helped me. So I'll plug something really quickly into the video. So I met Anthony, like I said, about a year ago, but really I met Anthony on a YouTube TV show that we did called The Eviction. And so it basically, Samuel Lee's basically put, how many, about 12 people, I think, was it?
Well, yeah, it was 12, wasn't it?
12 people in some random castle near Stoke, and basically just gave us a load of property challenges. And so there was a boy and girls team for like the first challenge, and then he mixed it up, and I ended up on Anthony's team for literally the whole of it, and we both ended up going to the final, and Anthony won the final. But during that time, and literally spending like a month with Anthony, I learned so much in terms of buy, refurb, refinance and property in general. And that's why I wanted to literally get him on here today, because his knowledge is like epic. So I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. Is that okay now?
Yeah, sure. Fire away.
You can literally, impart your wisdom on these people. So my second question to you is, so obviously we're focusing on buy, refurb, refinance. Can you tell me like what things you look for when you go and look at a house, and this is your strategy, it's buy, refurb, refinance. What do you go looking for in a house on a viewing?
So with buy, refurbish, refinance, obviously we know that the two crucial parts with this strategy are, firstly, we're looking to buy a property below market value because we want to add value through the refurb. So then the refurb part of the property, once I've found that property that I can find below market value, I want to focus on how I can add value to it. Now, normally there's 3 types of properties that we pick up for buy, refurbish, refinance. And most people are really only focused on one type of property that they'll think about picking up. So the first one is probably the most common one. And these are like your completely battered properties. We've been in some in Wales, you and I, and, the floorboards are missing, and, they need literally back to brick rip outs. And these are great properties to pick up. But usually you find that the refurb is quite significant. So your numbers need to be absolutely perfect on that type. The second type of property is one that's more dated. So where it might have been some old persons living in the property, and they've been living there, their whole entire life, and not had much refurb to the property. These are great properties to pick up, but when we go into these ones, what we're looking for is where work has been done to the property already. So whether it's had, new wiring, a new consumer unit, new boiler, because these are the things that will catch you out. And we've been into properties before where we thought that the refurb is going to be significantly lower. And then when we've looked at this level of detail on the property, we've seen that actually running right the way throughout the property to the boiler is, 15 mil gas pipes. So it means they're not big enough for the boiler. So then obviously when we're looking at refurb value, normally most people will go, oh, add a new boiler to it. We're talking 1,500 quid, where actually, because you've now got to do pipe work throughout the property, you've significantly added that value on the refurb. So with that type of property, we're really looking at what work has been done throughout the time of the person living there. And then the last one, these are probably my more favourite ones to pick up, and we see a lot of them at the minute, are ones that just need a little bit of love to it, just a bit of work. So it might be a landlord that's selling it off cheap because they just want to get it off their portfolio. And, new kitchen, new bathroom, maybe new front doors, back doors, and just, paint and decoration. And you can add so much value to them type of properties. So I really like picking them up. But they're really the three things that we look at when we go in. And in terms of physically inside the property, a couple of things that we really focus on. One, I've already said, is the consumer unit. So I'm not an electrician. And, until we start lifting floorboards up, you can't really tell what goes on in there. And but one thing we can look at is if there is a newer consumer unit in there, then we can usually with a degree of certainty say that the property has probably had some kind of rewire along the time. We've just completed a property in Gecky Gallid. Obviously you'll know that one had to have a full rewire with it, whereas it had a new consumer unit. And, it's not until you start pulling floorboards up that you notice that the impact that's been had in the property and all the bodge jobs that have gone on in it. So it's really important that we check that.
100%.
So that's mainly really what we start to look for in the property.
I'll add something there. So talking about your third strategy in terms of like just adding value. So a sense of it may just be somebody's got really old wallpaper and the property looks old and tired, but when you peel everything back, it's actually in decent condition. You taught me a big lesson with this in terms of, I think it's episode 2, it might be in the Eviction, whereby we had a HMO and it was a horrible HMO and it was old and we spent under £2,000 on it. And it looked like a brand new house, new carpet. We painted the doors in the kitchen. We painted the whole house white. And it literally increased the value of the property and the rental value, didn't it?
I think we, if I remember rightly, didn't we increase the room value by around about £50? I think it was per room, but it just goes to show, that living standard. And I think that living standard has really improved. We've gone far beyond magnolia walls, and brown carpets. And some of the standards of the people that are doing buy, refurbish, refinance now, people are going to such massive extremes to put really nice tiles in the bathroom, really nice laminates throughout the property. And all these things are adding significant, eye value to the property. So then obviously people are going to rent it in the long term.
No, I totally agree with you. Right, my third question. Now, this one, it took me a while to get my head around this, and I did so much research on it because so many people have differing ways of doing it. But my question to you is, how do you do your due diligence on your sold comparables and then your rental comparables? Like, what's your process? How do you do it?
So basically, when I'm looking to do buy, refurbish, refinance, I'm always looking at the area to start with, because sold comparables is going to be the thing that's going to help me get my value at the end of it. So I never look in an area that isn't very fluid. And what I mean by that is I'm looking at the sold ratio to start with. So if there's not much activity in the area, then I'm potentially going to start to struggle because I'm not going to have any sold comparables in the area. But if there's lots going on in the area, there's lots of buying, there's lots of selling, then that tends to start to help because you've got more comparables. So once I've found an area like that, then, this term of comparing apples to apples, if I've got a 2-bedroom terraced house, I want to compare it to a similar property in the area, 2-bedroom terraced house. But I'm always, again, looking at the standard that I'm going to put my property at.
Yeah.
So I know, you know, lots of times people will look at sold comparables and they'll see a house and I might think that I'd like my value of this new property to be £82,000. And there's one on the market that's sold for 78, but it's all magnolia walls, you know, the kitchen's quite standard. So already I'm thinking to myself, that's not a sold comparable for me, because I'm obviously going to do mine to a higher standard than that, you know. And we've done it with 2 properties where we've actually broke the market value of the street, because we've you know, so this is where sold comparables is a great starting marker, but it's not the be all and end all, because if you're going above and beyond to do these extra things with the property, you are going to increase it past that.
Yeah.
So we start with sold comparables. And then if we can't find a direct comparable within the last 6 months, usually we go a quarter of a mile. Sometimes we will push it a little bit past that. It really depends on the area and you know, and how much the dynamic of the area changes once you go past that.
Yeah.
If we can't find any of them, then what we'll tend to do is we'll go to estate agents and we'll ask a couple of questions of the agents, because we want to speak to the valuers there at the agents.
Yeah.
And the first question we want to ask them is, look, we'll explain, I'm buying a property in this area. This is what I'm going to do to the property. I'm going to put it to this standard. This is what the finish is going to be like, you know, and go to the full detail of what it's going to look like, and ask them, how much would you value that property at? How, as a valuer, what would that property be valued at in that state? And they'll give you a figure. And usually we tend to find that this is an inflated figure against what you'll actually achieve.
Yeah.
So then we then ask them the same question again and say, okay, same property. I'm going to give you the same property in that condition in the area. The only condition will be that you need to sell that property today at 12 o'clock. So I'm going to give it you today and I want it gone by midday. What price would you need to sell it at?
Yeah.
And what will happen is they'll give you a more realistic figure, and then you know that the averagely your figure for that is going to be sort of like the mean in between it all.
Yeah.
And that tends to work quite well for us. And then if we've got nothing in the area whatsoever, then obviously we will go and get a valuation on the property. And you can get a speculative valuation on the property prior to work if you can show a schedule of works.
Yeah.
It isn't as accurate as you'd want it to be. It would be better to get the valuation after. But obviously, you know, with this strategy, we need to know, you know, the key is getting it, the valuation before the property is completed, really, as opposed to when it's finished.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. And that's literally awesome. We had a quick question that came in as you were speaking, and it was along the lines of deal sourcing. Do you tell, and I'll just quickly address it now. And the guy basically said, do you tell agents when you're speaking to them that you're basically inquiring on behalf of an investor and that you're looking to deal source? Personally, with me, I always call them and say, look, I'm sort of kind of calling on behalf of myself or a colleague, and that's the way that I kind of get them into the deal, because a lot of estate agents don't really like the whole sourcing thing. Like, quickly, what do you do?
Yeah, exactly the same. The thing is, it's about confidence, isn't it? You know, so we never lie to agents, but if you go in and say, hi, I'm a deal sourcer, you've almost stopped yourself at the front door.
Yeah.
Whereas if you go in and you can be honest about what you're doing and say, hi, you know, I'm looking to buy properties in the area. We go in with a hunting brief sometimes. This is what I'm looking for. And sometimes I'll take a decision in principle, or I'll take my proof of funds with me, so they know I'm serious. And then say, look, you know, I'm buying properties actively in this area, whether it be for myself or for my business partners. This is my criteria. This is my proof of funds. And then they start to take me more seriously, because if they've had all that detail and then all of a sudden I turn around to them and say, actually, this person's going to be buying it now, I've had it accepted, they're never going to be offended.
No, yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Thank you for that. Appreciate it. Right, question 4. What's your like best experience been? If you could highlight one with this strategy, like a good memory or something.
My best experience is probably putting the tenants in my property and crew, because that's what I want. Is, you know, it's all about tenants, it's all about providing great homes to people. But actually the most profitable one that we've done was probably the one we did in Mountain Ash. So this was obviously sourced with yourself. And Bruce Street, that was a great property, because the whole experience was, you know, we really refined the process. So, you know, from the point we exchanged, we knew the numbers worked really well. We had a great builder in there, you know, that got all the work done. The day the builder had finished the work, the letting agent was there, giving us a valuation on the rent, and then obviously the day after we rented it out. So that's exactly what you want to achieve, really.
Yeah, that was, but how everything went with that particular deal, obviously how you guys managed it, like you had great project management from the start. It all kind of went along way too good to be true. And then, like you said, right at the end of the deal, you literally pretty much already rented it out. And then, do you want to quickly tell them, but we may as well, because it's a great success story, in terms of the valuation, what you guys got and what came out of it?
So we were expecting, so we bought it for just under 40,000, so just under stamp duty. We spent £12,500 on the refurb, and we were expecting to value out at 75, which would have meant we pulled all our money back out, but we actually ended up valuing out at 76. So it might have only been £1,000 above what we expected, but you can imagine that this investor was extremely happy, and we've built such a huge relationship with him. It's great for yourself, it's great for us, and it just proves that the due diligence that we do on the properties, and how conservative we are with the figures. We know what we're talking about. We know the level of details down to the refurb. We know the level of details down to the end values, because we've worked all that out prior to it.
No, that was an awesome one. Okay, so my fifth question is turning that on its head. So what's your worst experience that you've had with buy refurb refinance so far?
I won't really say I've had a bad experience, because I love the opportunity of challenges, and we have had some challenges along the way. I think the biggest learning curve, probably, to say it would be my worst experience, was with the first property that we did ourselves. So this was a property I bought in Wigan. We bought this under the premise of buy refurbish refinance. And from start to finish, it was a big learning curve. The refurb ran over. There was things that happened in the house that we weren't expecting, where we started to redo the kitchen and realized that we had to replace the whole floor because there was a cellar in there. So all these things, really impacted the property. And then to completely knock it on its head, it then got downvalued on the back end of it. You could think that, oh my God, this is a nightmare property. But the good thing is that we always plan for all of these in with the strategy. So even though the property was downvalued, and it meant that we actually borrowed the money to do this property from an investor. So it meant that we left money in the deal, which most people would panic about that. But we had an exit strategy in place for this to make sure we protected both the investor and ourselves. So even though it was a big challenge, because we put all these things into place, it's a great property. It rents out really well. And we've actually paid that investor back now. So that's that's the goal, really, is the main.
And I bet from that experience you picked up so many pieces of knowledge, and so many things, like things that you should look for, or things that you should and shouldn't do, that's probably saved you money now when you go into a property and look at things now.
Yeah, definitely, that's it. And that, like I say, everything's an opportunity to learn with this strategy, but it's got to be done in a way that doesn't become costly. And I think that's about being savvy with it.
Quickly saying that, somebody's just asked and said, do you have like a way of assessing a property when you go in it? I think that they just literally joined when you go in and view it. For me, I have set things, like you said, that you look for. So particularly you look at the consumer unit, you look at the plumbing system, the electrical system, damp proof course, things like that. A lot of people have checklists. A lot of my checklist is up in my head just because I've seen so many properties in South Wales. I know kind of what they're like. They're all older properties, massive thick walls. Most of them need rewiring, to be honest with you. But some people have checklists. Is there anything that you do, or is it just basically all your knowledge in your head?
Yeah, basically. So I have a checklist of things that I know I want to go and see in the property when I go in. And to start with, I used to take that checklist with me, and I used to go through it in the properties. But what I was tending to find with this was that I was missing things, because even though when you book a viewing, your viewing's 30 minutes, it never really ends up like that. They want to kick you out after 20. So what I tend to do with the properties now is I know religiously the things I want to check in the property. So I'll go through the property with a fine-tooth comb, walking around for the first 10 minutes I'm in there. And then I'll go back down to the front door, and I'll start again, and I'll film with my camera, with my phone. Because then if I have missed something along the way that I would normally check in my checklist, I can see it on my video when I want to reassess it after. And sometimes there's things that you come across that you just want to pass along to a builder, or you want to get somebody else with a bit of experience to have a look at, so.
Because some people will look at properties and see a massive crack in a wall and go, oh my God, that's structural damage. When you literally present it to a builder and they say, no, it's just maybe a joist that's slightly moved or something like that. And actually it's not that costly. Brilliant. That's great. So my sixth question, final two. Do you like using bridging as a product when buying buy refurb refinance type of properties? And like, what would your advice, one piece of advice with bridging be to somebody who's never used it before?
I think bridging finance is a great opportunity for people that haven't got all the money to get into a deal.
Yeah.
I think, I'm not a broker, so I'm only going by the advice that my broker has given me recently. Sure. I think most people see bridging as an opportunity to pay for the property completely, pay for the refurb. Yeah. But actually, it's going to become more harder to achieve, all of that money as we come out of coronavirus and that environment. So if you're buying a property sort of below £60,000, you'll more often than not get the refurb with it. And people do see it as a golden ticket to get all of that money. And I think that's the real important thing with bridging finance is you need to have a really good broker in place, and you need to understand the process of bridging finance. Yeah. Because most people think that, I can achieve 75% loan to value on bridging. But the reality is, day one of the loan that you'll get, you probably only are going to obtain about 65%, with obviously your rolled up interest and things like that. So I think the most important thing with bridging, great tool, is understand your fees and understand the process. And if you are going to use bridging finance, if you think the refurb is going to be 6 months, you want to get your bridging for at least 3 months more, if not longer than that, because you've got to protect yourself.
Yeah, 100%. So one thing that we're doing at the moment with bridging is we're getting 12 months, even though we think some of our projects will be a lot less than that, for the pure reason of what's going on at the moment with COVID, which actually leads me on to my next question with you, actually. But it gives us a longer time period. So we've worked out our bridging fees, max up to 12 months. We've worked at that's basically costed into our projects. And then what we can do then is, we can either sort of like see how the market does in the next sort of like 6 months after that. Yeah. It just buys us a bit more time. But I personally love bridging because I think it gives, like people say cash is king. And I think I totally agree with it. And I think bridging allows you to, purchase properties pretty much for cash, essentially. Yeah. And that's why I love it. Some people are really scared of it, but I know that obviously, if you understand the process thing, you are a big lover of it as well. Yeah.
Well, we're going to be using it in the development of the pub that we're buying as well. Yeah. And, so the fees are a lot bigger in that, and it's a lot bigger project. But again, it's a case of, as long as it's worked out within the deal, then that's it. That's how you protect yourself with it. Understand the process, have a great broker that can talk you through it. Yeah. And, and don't lie about what's going to happen with a property, because that's what people do, is they pretend they're going to do one thing and then they haven't accounted for this or they haven't accounted for that. Yeah. And that's how you catch yourself out really with it.
No, I agree with you. Totally agree with you. So my seventh and final question to you is, do you have any sort of like pieces of wisdom or any pieces of information that you think would help somebody that's looking to invest in buy refurb refinance? And I guess in this particular market that we are right now with COVID, it's quite a niche question, I know that, but like, if you could think of some bits of knowledge, if I was brand new to finance and I was like, and I want to get involved right now, what would you say?
I think the most important thing, and we've talked about it right the way through all of this, is that don't make the deal work for the numbers. The numbers have got to work for the deal. Yeah. Everybody that is successful with buy refurbish refinance, they all say the same thing, and that is you make your money when you buy. This process is all about you buy at the right price, you've got your refurb at the right price, you've got your end value at the right price. And lots of people are talking about obviously coronavirus and how it's going to impact the market and what that's going to look like. And if end values go down, then your purchase price goes down with it, because that money has got to be made, as I say, when you buy it. And what most people will try and do is they'll try and change the numbers. They'll try and think, I can go in and do some work myself. I'll go in and do this. I'll do that. And the reality is that's not, if the deal doesn't work, then you just need to walk away. If you're going to go and do work for the property, that's fine. But the deal needs to be able to stack without you there. It needs to be stacking remotely. So that's probably it. But in terms of sort of coronavirus, people are asking this question a lot at the minute. And what I genuinely think is going to happen outside of coronavirus is, I think that there was a huge demand for people buying houses, prior to coronavirus. You know, we've obviously gone through Brexit. We spent all that time going through Brexit, and then all of a sudden the deal gets completely done, and then people want to buy houses, and then coronavirus hits, and then no longer people can buy houses because everyone's panicking, everyone's scared again. But that demand hasn't gone away. That demand is still there. And when we come out the back of all of this, it's really going to depend on a couple of different things. And one of them is going to be how people react to it. Because if people start to get scared, and if people start to become selfish because they think, I need to sell my house quickly because I need the money, then they're going to all of a sudden start to set the house prices in the area. You know, so if somebody wants to quickly sell their property, I'm so sorry, Hannah. Cats, you know what it's like.
Red has been running up and down, and so I'm just slowly so you're fine.
But that's the thing is, you know, if we come out the back of this, and there's people out there that all of a sudden, you know, think that with coronavirus, what's happened, there's no one going to sell my property, I need to get out of there quickly, and they drop their price 20%, then the next person has to do it, and the next person has to do it, and the next person has to do it. And then that's where I think we're going to see a dip in house prices. But I think the demand is still there.
I agree with you.
But with buy, refurbish, refinance, I think the interesting thing is going to be is I think the market is going to become very tough for that strategy when we come out the back of it. Because I think so many people now are educating themselves, and so many people are reading, you know, news articles and seeing these things about house price crashes. So everyone's going to come out the back and think that they're going to be able to get a bargain.
Yeah.
And I think that's why it's really important to understand the process, understand your end value, your purchase price, and your refurb to make sure you're not buying, you know, a bad deal, because there is going to be a lot of people. And you know, if somebody new to the strategy gets into it and then all of a sudden says, you know, goes to an agent and they say, you know, it starts a bidding war on a property, they may think that the value is going to be higher at the end, and they may end up buying a bad deal. Because there's going to be just this drive of people trying to go towards the strategy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I mean, the thing for me is you obviously know it just as well as me that in South Wales there's a real rental demand. There always has been, which is great. That's one half of it. And when we started looking, there was great value in properties, and there was a lot of them out there. Over the last 3 to 4 months, a lot of people have obviously cottoned on to the fact that you can buy very cheap houses and you can do this strategy very, very well in South Wales. So properties are literally going like the same day that they're on the market. So one thing that I found in that kind of strategy is basically direct to vendor, and just literally trying to get property before they even hit estate agents. Because unfortunately, you will find that estate agents have preferences over certain investors, and they feed them properties. And so that's the way that I've kind of overcome it. But I totally agree with you. I think the market's become a lot more difficult. They are still out there.
But that's it.
Hands on.
That's it. And you know, an interesting point that you said there is South Wales at the minute. You know, every 5th person that messages me mentions South Wales, and it will create a false economy in the area, because it will, you know, that people will buy the houses at the wrong prices, and then it will force the economy up. So I live in the Midlands, and the same thing happened with Stoke-on-Trent and Crewe. You know, where they're forcing the house prices up because they're just, you know, just injecting into properties and buying these properties at the wrong prices.
I agree with you. And
you know, which, and I think it could happen, you know, and that's the problem with the strategy. So I think the most important thing, like I say, with any strategy, and especially buy, refurbish, refinance, if all the masses are here doing this here, you need to be focusing down here. So wherever everybody focuses and forces that value up, I'll just be looking somewhere else, you know, and that's how you'll stumble on a great area and pick up great properties and be ahead of the curve.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. I was, I'll give you a story quickly about that. So there's a lot of investors that have come from England, particularly around Gloucester area and around there, that have come to South Wales to buy cheap properties. So I'll look at a property, and for me, let's say a really rundown property, my top limit is 55 is what I'm going to offer on it, and it's worth 55. But because they see a property for £55,000, they're like, oh my god, it's really, really cheap. They'll buy it for 65. But there's no money in the deal then for this particular strategy. But they're more than happy to pay 65 grand for a 3-bed terraced house and then rent it out.
Exactly.
And that's their strategy, and that's great. But for buy refurb refinance, that's it, like you said, it drives prices up, and it's just not worth it. It prices you out the deal.
Yeah, exactly. And like I say, that creates then that false economy, because if and the same will happen on the reverse. If everybody drops prices at the back end of it, they'll all come down the same. But like, you know, you'll see that prices in Wales now, a lot of these rundown properties, these buy refurbish refinance type of deals, are 10 grand more expensive than they were 6 months ago.
Exactly. Yeah.
But they're not now worth 10 grand more money. It's just because of this false economy, you know, this injection of investors in the area.
Yeah, no, totally agree with you. I was reading something, I think it was the beginning of this year, that last year in Barry, now Barry's had loads and loads of redevelopment, like brand new houses. House prices in Barry last year alone went up 11% in 1 year, which is mental. Which is absolutely mental. So I do think there still is a market in South Wales, but I think the buy refurb refinance one probably maybe isn't it. I think that probably maybe development is probably more.
It's interesting you say that,
because I think you agree with me.
Yeah, well, I've been, you know, I've been spending this time focusing on land development, training, and commercial to residential, because I think that, you know, it's really unfortunate to say, and it's unfortunate it's going to happen. But there's going to be a lot of businesses that don't come back as a result of coronavirus. You know, so that's going to present a lot of opportunities for commercial to residential. You know, if you think about more than often, most councils are about 20% behind their housing fulfillments, you know, for houses that they're supposed to build every single year. So if we can support that now, and like I said, if everyone's here, this is where I'm going to focus. So I'll start look at these properties like the pub, where we can do commercial to residential, or land plots where we can support the development in the area. We can support the council, because I know that with all these building plots that have stopped working, if I can approach the council and I know exactly where they're looking to build, I know where the housing shortage is, and I just present them with an opportunity, like we did with the pub, it'll go through planning like that. And that's the key, you know. So, and then as buy refurbish refinance settles down, it will always be my strategy, because, you know, we want to improve towns, we want to improve these houses in the area.
But it's good to diversify, and I think that little golden nugget that you shared at the end there, some of these people that are watching this are going to go ding ding.
Exactly.
Because it's a brilliant piece of advice, and one thing that Gwen and myself have been looking at really seriously over the last probably 4 or 5 months, and we've got some things in the pipeline which I'll tell you a little bit later, and the rest of these guys a little bit later. But that piece of knowledge is pretty good, and the thing is, not an awful lot of people are talking about it at the moment. So the really, really big players are doing it, but obviously they're not talking about it. And so I appreciate you sharing that, because I'm sure these people are going to really, really enjoy that.
Yeah, definitely.
Just don't look where Anthony's looking.
Yeah, there. Just stay away from it. No. That's the thing, though. There's so much opportunity out there for it, and you tend to find, when you start to look at commercial to residential and land development, it is scary because the numbers are so much bigger. But there's so much less competition out there, because, you know, people go after plots and it takes 2 years for them to build them out. So there's so much opportunity for people. And like I say, if you're doing it in the right areas and you're understanding what the local council does, then you're going to pull some great deals out of it. 100%.
I totally agree with you. I'm on the same path as you. But I just want to say, so literally that was my last question. I want to say thank you very much for coming on today and literally sharing your piece of advice. Guys, Anthony John Wilmott is at Anthony John Wilmott is Ant's Instagram details. He's also on Facebook. Are you on YouTube as well? You've got a YouTube channel? Yeah,
I've just started a new YouTube channel. I'm going to be putting some, you know, property stuff up there, some mindset stuff. So I'm going to be filming lots of stuff in the coming weeks.
So you literally need to connect with this guy. He's an absolute fountain of knowledge. I'll put some of his details on this video, which will then be going on YouTube for anybody that's missed it. And obviously you can connect with Anthony through his channels. Really good guy. And yeah, he's brilliant. So thank you very much for coming on today. And I'll probably give you a little bit a call later to talk about your commercial to residential.
Yeah, definitely. Brilliant. Thanks, Hannah.
Right.
See you all soon.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.